Almost 60% of the world population are labor force and spend most of their time at workplace. All workers have the right to a safe and healthy working environment. It is not only a fundamental right, but are also more likely to minimize tension and conflicts at work and improve staff retention, work performance, and productivity. Conversely, a lack of effective structures, support, and protection at work, especially for those living with psychological health conditions, can affect a person's ability to enjoy the work and perform their job at the optimal level. Financial stress and psychological health. Are our employees protected? I am Fauzi Hussein, and this is The Insights.
Let's go.
AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FEWRC, conducted a study on more than 3,000 Malaysian working adults to gain insights into the landscape of financial stress and mental well-being. We have uncovered several key findings. Number one, the study found that financial stress among Malaysian working adults, MWAs, increased by 35% since the pandemic began in 2020. The data stated obviously that the most vulnerable group was those with the least amount of savings. Number two, 41% of them reported that financial stress affected their mental health. If this condition goes unattended or untreated, it could even result in very serious, sometimes life-threatening illnesses. When it comes to job productivity, 65% of those who experience financial stress admitted that the stress affects their job performance. The situation causes ineffective communication, instability of emotions, and disrupts their overall capabilities. These circumstances will indirectly affect the organization's bottom line. On average, Malaysian working adults need a very good support system to manage stress. In 3/4, 77% of respondents said that they could not handle stress on their own and required assistance. So together with us today, we have three guests who are passionate about the well-being of employees. So let me introduce the first guest on my right, the founder and Group Managing Director, Alaminda Healthcare Berhad. Welcome, Dr. Hazli Zakaria.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for being with us, Doctor, today. And I would like to go for the second panelist today, Dr. Abu Hassan Samad. He's a President, Academy of Occupational and Environmental Medicine Malaysia. Welcome to the Insight, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, and the last but not least, Professor Dr. Durisha Idrus, Chief Executive, IJN College National Heart Institute. Welcome to the Insights, Prof.
Thank you for the invite.
Welcome, Prof. All right, without any delay, we go to the first segment, which is my question to Dr. Hazli. As an experienced psychiatrist, Dr. Hazli, could you shed some light on how does financial stress deteriorates employees' psychology, subsequently their physical health?
Oh, thank you for the question, Fauzi. Without we realize, money and mental health is very closely related, share something in common. One thing, we only realize the importance of them, we don't have it. And then, both of this issue, the person have it, they come very late to seek help. The same thing happened to AKPK. When they have problems, severe problem, they come. The same thing with mental health. The relationship between these two are bidirectional, meaning when we have a financial stress, will lead to mental stress. But we have to remember also, when we have a good financial health, we lead a better mental health. We need to focus also on how to keep our financial fitness and mental fitness, right? For example, when we have a financial health in a good condition, we can have a healthy lifestyle. We can go for holiday. We don't have to go for healing. We go before we have to go for healing, for example. And then when we have a good mental health, we have a better judgment. We're able to organize our financial matter better. And then when we do not have the way we cope, when we have stress, we don't have much reserve, much money, we cannot use the way that we used to have to cope with our mental health issues. And then sometimes the mental health issues lead us to have a maladaptive behavior. We tend to shop more. So when you see your wife spending more from Shopee, or should I say Shopee? I cannot say, right? Meaning that she could be stressed, full, and then maybe you could be the source of stress. Just kidding. So what I'm trying to say is very important for us to see the relationship between these two, and then how it affects the physical health. When we do not have a good and healthy lifestyle, will affect our physical health. And more important also, for both of these symptoms of financial stress and mental stress, the symptoms are physically manifested. So thank you for asking the question, and because it's very important for us to realize the interrelated between physical health, mental health, and financial health.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hazli, for the interesting awareness. In fact, when the psychological and physical health of employees are in vulnerable state, this directly jeopardizes the job productivity and performance. As the president of Academy Occupational and Environmental Medicine Malaysia, Dr. Abu Hassan, based on your observations and experiences, what are the examples of psychological hazards that exist in the workplace?
Thank you for asking that question. Let me start by describing first what you understand by the term hazard. Hazard is anything that has potential to cause harm either to the person or to the workplace or to the environment. So therefore, we normally categorize them into safety hazard, health hazard, and environmental hazard. So specifically on the health hazard, we have categorized them into 5 different groups, which is number 1, physical hazard, for example, like noise, heat, and then we talk about chemical that we use at the workplace that may cause harm on the workers. Then we talk about the biological hazard that can also cause harm on the workers, the virus, the bacteria, and so on. And then the 4th one would be the ergonomic factors that involve, for example, workstation, how do we work with our workstation, the postures and whatnot. And the last one, which is in the past has not been highlighted, is the psychosocial hazard. Now, psychosocial hazard now becoming more and more important, and I think the government, even the industry, the companies, even the authority like DOSH, Department of Occupational Safety and Health, they begin to understand that psychosocial hazard is now becoming more and more important. And as you said, post-pandemic, it become more apparent, and many companies pay attention to that. And when we talk about psychosocial hazard, unfortunately, the financial stress is not in the picture at all. And partly because financial stress has nothing to do with workplace. The employer has little control on that. It is not generated by the workplace. It is not generated by the employer. It is generated, quote unquote, by the employee themselves. So because of that, the employer tend not to pay attention to that. But any other factors that relate to psychosocial stress, for example, like long working hours, poor work environment, poor supervision, that tend to be paid attention by the employer. So I guess it will be some time before we begin to realize that financial stress could be an important factor that may affect the employer ability to work. And I think we all recognize that it can cause difficulty or challenging situation for the workers while they are at work. But the point I'm trying to stress here is that very little can be done by the employer because the whole issue has nothing to do with the workplace and has nothing to do with the employer.
That is a very insightful view. And then from the points of mention, it's now evident here that financial stress can amplify the impact of various psychological hazards in the workplace, right? And therefore, it is essential for employees to have a supportive and inclusive working environment for them to manage their financial stress. Yeah? And from this point of view, then, Professor Dr. Durishah Idris, As a figure with HR and public policy expertise, do you think HR practitioners are doing enough in addressing employees' financial stress?
Thank you, Syed. I think it all depends on employers themselves, all right? Whether these are, employers, big companies, for example, SME companies, for example, or, employers who believe in good governance, okay, who care for the employees, who in Malaysia, for example, go accordance with the law, all right? And when we say, are they doing enough? The HR have their bosses, the CEOs, for example, all right, like all of us here understand today. How do we care for our employees? I think that makes a difference whether they are doing enough or not. But ultimately, or on top of that, it is the policies that govern the whole working environment in Malaysia, if we are referring to Malaysia. In other developed nations, for example, we know that there are, highly, I would say, excellent employers, right? Companies where put their employees happy and satisfied, and they want to stay there long. They want to work there until retirement, for example. Why? Because HR and the employers, the bosses, care for them. The salary, the perks, all right, that come together with it. In Malaysia, for example, EPF, for example, SOCSO, for example, medical coverage, for example, the working environment is not poisonous, it's not toxic. People are working harmoniously. The boss look into this as part of yearly appraisal, for example, that each person contributes to that. The bosses, the middle management, the subordinates, or the support system, the support staff, they're all working together. We have many companies around the world, for example, Samsung, for example, Apple, BMW in Germany, for example, many employers across the world. In the developed nations, for example, they pay the workers or the employees, the salary that define them, they're happy with the salary, they're happy with the perks, they're happy with the working environment. I think the HR of Malaysia, some are okay, some, or I would say quite many, are not okay. Meaning they are looking at, usually they need competence to do this, and they need also, I would say, creativity to do this, not just following the orders of the bosses, but really care for the employees. What about career advancement? That is part of it, and we have here skilled workers, unskilled workers, highly skilled workers. How do we interpret that in terms of salary and perks and advancement in their career, as long as they work? That's why here in Malaysia, at the moment after the pandemic, we can see that people are job hopping, They may not stay with you for long because, there are other offers out there and they will go. And not just in Malaysia, we're having brain drain as well. People go outside of Malaysia, go into at developed nations where the pay is high and the working environment is much, much better. They go to Singapore, for example, And it's sad, I think, if people keep on going to Australia or New Zealand and, the highly skilled, the surgeons, the consultants, for example, some thinkers, they just leave Malaysia. I think that is something that HR and the employers, and also at the end, I'm going to speak about policy, for example. This all matters to ensure that we're doing good for our employees in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. This has been an interesting discussion, but we are still at the beginning of the discourse. We will take a break for a moment. We will be right back. Thank you.
Let's go. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Insights, brought to you by AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FEWRC. So just now, we are talking about the financial stress and psychological health of working adults in Malaysia. We also talk about the examples of psychological hazards in the workplace. So now let's proceed to Dr. Hazli again. And now for the second round, as we all know, mental health or mental illness are invisible through X-rays or MRI scans, but is often detected by behavioral aspects demonstrated by the person. In the case of a professional psychiatrist, for example, doctor, what are the initial symptoms a person may manifest in the case of mental illness?
Okay. Syed mentioned that mental illness invisible in terms of the symptoms, and then it's considered as personal. So that's why the financial problem, mental health issues are considered as a personal issue, which, as Dr. Abu Hassan mentioned, very difficult for the employer want to tackle, because this is part of the personal of that employee. But unfortunately, for the physical symptoms are the manifestation of the mental illness. Most of the patients come to seek us, complain of not able to sleep well, having poor energy, and then and not able to focus, and then no longer able to eat as much as before. Musang King no longer interests them.
Yeah.
They all are physical. Most of the time, they already have the symptom for quite some time, slowly develop. When they come to see us with the physical symptom, they will go and seek help from other specialists first. Gastro, when they thought they have a peptic ulcer, but actually could be the symptoms of anxiety. That is the tricky part. The same thing also with financial stress. I think the symptoms also something to do with physical and psychological, not really manifested in the form of financial problem that they have. Sometimes it's such a taboo for them to discuss about that. So it's important for us to realize symptoms of mental illness are physical at the beginning. That's the reason I want to emphasize again, for all doctors, please explore and asking the symptoms of psychological illness when the person presented with physical illness. It's important for us to think about it. If we are not looking, we are not going to find that. So that important also for highlight, there is a closely related between physical health and mental health. I'm pretty sure, Prof, remember, the heart, the jantung, the heart is very much determined whether they are manage their stress well or not, especially for those who already had a heart attack. So again, thank you again for the question. So you really know what the question to ask, for us to emphasize the importance of looking after physical health and explore the possibility of having mental illness and financial difficulties as well.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. It's important for us to learn and be aware of these behavioral symptoms, especially among our work colleagues. And redirecting this issue to Dr. Abu Hassan. From the perspective as a head of an organization that oversees a work culture, could you highlight and elaborate the impact of employees' psychological illness on a company or organization?
Thank you. Let me discuss from the point of the employee performance. Because as mentioned by Dr. Hazli, if the workers are affected psychologically, they won't be able to function as expected. And that will affect them physically and mentally. And that will translate into the difficulty in them performing their job or fulfilling their job obligation. And there are two aspects here. One is what we call absenteeism. In other words, some of them may be in a bad situation, will take medical leave and then be away from work. And there's a tendency for them to take medical leave very frequently, and sometimes exceeding even the leave allocation provided by the company. And they will try to find ways and means to be away from work. So that would be one aspect. That I would say would be the worst case. And a good company should be able to identify these workers from their performance, difference in performance from what they were doing before and now. And they should be able to interfere accordingly. Now, the other aspect is what we call presentism. Presentism refers to a situation whereby the workers are at work, but they are not performing. They are physically there, but they are not really doing their work. Simply because maybe because they are mentally upset, they are occupied with something, so they can't really focus on their job, worried about financial situation, worried about family, worried about a lot of things. So because of that, they are not really delivering. So the quality, therefore, is affected. So from employer point of view, the whole thing translates into reduced productivity, reduced deliverable, the quality of the service is affected, and so on. So it does have major impact to the company. And studies have shown that presenteeism actually account to significant contribution towards the impact on the company, even compared to absenteeism. So some people are worried about medical leave, too many medical leave, but actually there are people who are at work, may not be on medical leave, but they are not really delivering because there's so many things affecting them. And one of them will be mental health. This is something that we need to recognize, and we need to be able to interfere and assess the workers and also assist them accordingly.
All right, thank you, Dr. Abuasan. That is an interesting perspective. And from a macro perspective, special attention needs to be given to the psychological health of the nation's workforce, especially those in SMEs, as these organizations are the backbone of our economy. So now my question to Prof. In your opinion, what will be the long-term impact for the nation as a whole if more attentive strategies are implemented to alleviate the workforce psychological health risk?
Okay, thank you. Very interesting how the two doctors share about, the scenario, right? And the impact of this to organizations. Definitely what happens at organization impact the nation. I think, as a whole, if only there is a policy that encapsulates, and looks at the bird's eye or helicopter view of what is now happening in our country, I think it's best. I think the last policy that we've had that covers all of this is called Dasar Buruh Negara. This is like way back in 1970s, can you imagine? This is like years ago. I think we need a new human capital policy, not just the progressive wage policy. I think the progressive wage policy for us to follow is well and good, but we also have to look at the scenario at the moment. Even the minimum wage policy, we cannot really, I don't think all employers are, following this according to the law, right? When we say, for example, minimum wage policy, 1,005 is for the lowest rank among the workers. If a graduate, for example, to survive in Kuala Lumpur, studies have shown at least 2,000, I think about 3,000, 2,700, I think about 3,000, right? And average of our salary is, the whole of Malaysian workforce, which amounts to, I think, about more than 15 million people, is about 5,000, I mean, this is, by comparison to developed nations, this is low. 2,700 is definitely very low as compared to developed nations' salary. So we should again look the impact of this in the long run, okay? We need foreign direct investments, but we also need to, look at the situation of the workers or employees in Malaysia. We should look at this and how does, for example, the progressive wage policy should really look at this, as a whole. It cannot be like, performance is very high, somebody who has very highly skilled in certain what is needed by the company, so this person will go up the career ladder very fast, for example, whereas someone who is loyal, for example, maybe he or she is not trained, for example, this will also impact the performance, as what both doctors were saying, and the impact is sickness and all that, absenteeism and presenteeism, there but not there, or not there at all. So for me, the policy, the nation will be impacted. The nation needs to have that policy that looks at the present scenario after the COVID-19, for example. Things change, okay? We are really living in a VUCA world where we need to look at uncertainties, and how does this being implemented at the workplace. Should, for example, where we work from home, flexi hours, be there, but, depending, we have the safety net all together with, and people can see their future, or how is that? being portrayed in our policy. So nations is impacted, I think, at the moment now, and government is doing so much, I think, to really again position Malaysia as, if I'm not mistaken, top 30 business-wise or economy-wise in the world. This actually relates back to our workers. And when we say workers, there are local workers, there are foreign workers. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof. So now let's take a break. Stay tuned.
Let's go. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Insights brought to you by AKPK Financial Education and Wellbeing Research Center, FEWRC. In the previous round, we had a very in-depth discourse regarding the symptoms of mental health disorders, how the employee's mental well-being could bring an impact to the organization, and the long-term and macro consequences our nation has to face if this issue is not properly addressed. So I will proceed to the question to Dr. Abu Hassan first, all right, in the third round of our discussion today. With the right approach, financial stress can be managed in the same logical and systematic way as other workplace safety and health risks. Then, Dr. Abu Hassan, what is your opinion on this matter?
Okay, let me touch base on from the legal perspective. Now, in our country, we have two acts pertaining to the workplace and the workers. Number one is the Factories and Machinery Act, Akta Jentera dan Kilang, 1967, which is very much focused on the kilang and the jentera. And in 1994, we have this OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Act, or Akta Keselamatan dan Kesihatan Pekerjaan, 1994. And OSHA talk about the responsibility of the employer to ensure the workplace is safe and healthy for the workers to work. And it is the duty of the employer to ensure that. Why? Because the employer creates the risk, so the employer must manage the risk. At the same time, the employees who work with the risk must also work together with the employer to ensure the workplace is also safe and healthy. So it's a two-way process where the employers do something and the employees do something towards a common goal. Now, when we talk about psychosocial hazard, it is recognized as one of the hazards. And as long as they are related to work, then it is the duty of the employer to manage it together with the employees. So let's say in the workplace there are bullies or harassment or violence, which is related to psychosocial or long working hours, monotonous work, shift work. That's something the employer need to manage and ensure the workers can sort of perform their work within the requirement of the company. But when we talk about financial stress, it's slightly different in the sense that, as we discussed earlier, financial stress is contributed by many factors where employer have very little control or very little role to play. So because of that, then there's no specific law that can be created or developed for that purpose. Because the law will say employer need to do this, employee need to do this. But when it comes to financial stress, how do we impose that on the employers? We cannot tell the employer, you must help your employees, but how do they help? Because if the people borrow money and they don't pay, that is their problem, not the employer problem. So there are a lot of issues that we need to think about from OSHA perspective. So I personally do not think OSHA can be applied for financial stress per se, but we can do something to help the workers who are affected by that. For example, through HR mechanism, we can have what we call employee assistance program. We can help them to manage the issue, how to, to manage their finance properly. So there are a number of activities that we can do, but all those activities I would probably say more related to HR and company program rather than related to the law itself. The law won't be able to do anything on that, but the law can help to facilitate the situation so that the worker can function better as required by the company.
I see. Thank you, Doctor. Very informative insights. Then we can say that financial stress can be considered as part of organizational issue, and employers have responsibility to ensure that workplace stress risks are properly assessed and controlled. However, as for the employers, Dr. Hazli, how much are we willing to invest in employees' welfare? Taking financial stress as an example. Do you think employer could provide redress revenue?
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Right.
As Prof mentioned, depend on the employer whether they want to do more than what they expected by law, for example. Whether they want to be a kind employer. For example, I'm talking about mental health. When HR related to mental health, there are two units that are responsible. One is the benefit, the health benefit. When they already diagnosed to have depression or anxiety disorder, they need a treatment. That's under HR, but under healthcare benefit. But we know also we have to educate all the employee about how to look after their mental health and how to reach out to seek help at the very early when the symptoms started to develop. So that will be part under HR of the training. But the problem when HR training is all about productivity, how to improve the skill, that improve the productivity. But we also need to teach our employee how to look after their financial health, how to look after their mental health in order for us to prevent from them become ill, which is going to use a lot of money of the company from the healthcare. Meaning that, Prof, maybe HR, these two units need to talk and walk together with us, mental health professional, together with AKPK, so that we have the concerted effort, provide the skill for us to prevent us from getting sick. Interesting, Syed. How many of us comfortable to take leave? Most of us keep our leave until at the end to go to Legoland, to go to Universal Studio. Yeah. But the leave should be taken to take a rest, to take a break. And then we did not take the leave that's supposed our right, and out we take medical leave. How many of us not comfortable to take medical leave? And then the employer also not happy when we take medical leave. Okay. When we do not take the leave for us to rest, we end up taking medical leave. So, and then the employer not happy, and then the productivity will reduce. I like when Dr. Abu Hassan mentioned that absenteeism, presenteeism, that is actually opportunity for us to explore rather than punishing them, but find out what could be the underlying reason for them to have this presenteeism. So for me, all these things that used to be a problem actually is a way, the entry for us to understand our employee better. Don't we want to be the better employer, the mindful employer, the kind employer? So the answer is up to the leadership of the company. The CEO, COO, CFO, they are the ones should change the mindset. The problem aside, when we do the stress management, all these CEO, CFO, CEO never come. Only the one who they thought the source of the problem forced to attend. How many times we did the stress management at the beginning before they absorb into as our employee rather than force them to do when their performance deteriorated. The budget can be displaced. We do not incur any additional budget. Leadership is the answer. Invest in mental health and financial health.
All right, invest in financial health. Then I would like, thank you, Dr. Hazli, before that. And then I would like to throw a question, the last question to Professor Dr. Durishah Idris. It is apparent that maintaining a healthy environment in workplace is an important factor in managing employees' well-being. So from here, Prof, speaking of establishing an HR policy generally and psychological safety at workplace specifically, where do we begin? How do we address the issue step?
I would say that Malaysia is very good at establishing new policies. But the catch is, about implementation, right? At company level, at the national level as well, right? I think everybody agrees. Implementation is our weakest link, right? Where do we start? actually, no matter how small or big, well, even better if it is big companies where they have much more resources to care for the employees, right? But even if it is a small company, SME actually contribute to the biggest income, GDP of Malaysia. So SME actually is the backbone of Malaysian economy. But look at our SME, right? Some are thriving, some were really badly affected during the pandemic. And the MEF, as the spokesperson, the Malaysian Employer Federation for the employer side, I think there is this loggerhead between employees, the QPACs, the MTUC, and the members, and also the government, this tripartite system that we have that, covers the industrial relations or the relations, the harmonious relations between workers and employers. So there are policies and we need that policies. I think we need to see beyond progressive wage policy to ensure that workers, it doesn't go to what both doctors were sharing rightly so just now, that is the outcome, the effect, all right, at the end of, stresses, of depression, of, mostly because we have about 15 million people, so mostly the workers, they are the one usually to go to, medical centers or specialists to, at the end, some kill themselves, or that is, I think, worst case scenario, but some cannot work anymore, cannot, care for their families and all that. So I think the policy should be at national level and then at the industry level. It has to be there. I think the law are all there. Industrial Relations Act, we have Trade Unions Act, for example, but how much workers, how many workers are covered by unions? I don't think it's less than 8% at the moment, and it is happening all over the world. But unions cover, because every 3 years you can have the collective bargaining, and then this is portrayed by a new collective agreements. But employers do not like this, okay? They do not like this at all. So what should be there? A good governance portrayed by the HR. Okay, the HR should be, highly educated and caring. The qualitative and the quantitative side has to be there. And if you can, provide your workplace as a very caring, and not just caring, but you have the safety net there, at least the minimal, then I think it will care for the psychological health, and lessen on the stressful side of among the workers. So how do we go step by step? We can at our level, at AKPK level, for example, at IJN level, for example, where we are. The more we learn, the more better we are, highly educated and caring. I think we can put this and it goes up and implement the policy as what the government, I think, is now very, very hard trying to do this for the whole of Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you, Dr. Abbas and Dr. Hazli. In conclusion, the way forward is clear. A supportive framework relies on an open communication platform, destigmatizing mental health issues and offering comprehensive resources for the employees. Employers possess the means to cultivate an environment where employees' well-being can flourish sustainably. This investment is not a mere expense. It is a commitment by the organization. By fostering a supportive ecosystem that nurtures financial well-being and psychological well-being, our nation can achieve a future where the workforce and organizations can thrive in harmonious tandem. For the past an hour, you have been on The Insights. Until then, I am Fauzi Hussein, and from the Insights team, thanks for watching. Goodbye.